Welcome to the NFL Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by TheLines.com. Coming to you from the country of France on vacation, still ready to bring you guys some NFL player props. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are taking a look at a week here in the NFL with plenty to choose from, Nate. A couple teams on bye, obviously, but we are excited for what we have for you today. Mo Nawara obviously could not join us, but I will be playing the role of Mo and talking about a bunch of unders today, probably more so than Nate and I are used to. Nate will keep us covered with some pretty good overs, as there are some pretty good juicy matchups in this one. Want to make in this week, I should say. Want to make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us. We bring you these player props each and every weekday of this NFL regular season. Also head to TheLines.com. You can get all of our great written content. Nate's got his picks up there and some more for you, all on TheLines.com this NFL season. Also have our odds finder tool on there for you guys, so you can go ahead and make sure that you are shopping NFL player props and all these lines and games to the best of your ability across U.S. sportsbooks. We are going to jump into a passing prop, rushing prop, and receiving prop here for you guys, one each from both of us. So Nate, let's go ahead and kick things off with your first passing prop.
Yeah, same as last week, going with Justin Fields again. Granted, I mean, we leaned more towards his passing prop, which didn't hit, but if you combine it with the rushing prop, it did.
I liked it.
He's averaging 77 rushing yards in his last three now. I actually do like the passing prop again, but now I'm going to bump the rushing yards in front of it, because I think that's a good way to hedge here. Maybe you want to bet on both. It's 223.5 for both. It's 170 for him to get passing, and it's just a much, much easier passing matchup. Plus, he adds Chase Claypool now, who you'd think the Bears are going to get involved right away as a second-round pick. A guy looking for a fresh start, and this guy brimming with athleticism who had an incredible rookie year. I don't know why he just faded away in Pittsburgh, but against the top-rated Cowboys defense last week, Fields completed 73% of his passes just for pitiful yards per attempt. But now he gets Miami, which ranks 29th, allows the seventh most passing yards per game, second highest completion rate. Still riddled by injuries, no Byron Jones, multiple safeties, either questionable or on IR for the Dolphins. So I just think it's an easy spot for the Bears to continue to ramp up offensively like they have. Look, I mean, they traded their two best defensive players in the last 2 weeks, and it's clear what direction they're trying to move in here. Since that Thursday night debacle where they lost 12-7 and had one of the most pathetic offensive showings we've seen, they've figured some things out. I mean, it's like, coaches, get something going here with Fields or you're going to be fired. And they've put it together. And I mean, he's putting up numbers. He's a solid DFS option for sure because of that rushing ability. I think he's who I start with there on FanDuel at a reasonable price, and I expect him to have a better passing day as well.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I took the passing and rushing combined for him. I don't know. I mean, he's going to get one of them. He's going to be their offense, right? He's going to be the focal point of it. He's going to get all the touches, whether it's through the air or on the ground. And so, I mean, whatever you got to do to get to the 250 for him, I think he's just going to continue to do that, right? I mean, for you, like I said, you said 224, his passing and rushing combined, but like the 70 yards feels like it's something he's just going to continue to do, and is a recipe for their offense to be able to look not anemic, right? Even to get the 23 against Dallas that they got against a really, really good Dallas defense with one of the best linebacking cores in the league and front sevens in the league. And he still managed to do his thing because he has to pose that threat to them. He's proven he's not going to be able to pass from the pocket and be successful in that way. You can sprinkle some throws in there from the pocket for him as long as you've already got him on the move. And there's just too many opportunities for him to keep the ball and run it that make that prop, if you're going to go over it, make you feel like you need the rushing yards. So I'm going to go under on a straight passing prop here for Mr. Stafford. We've done this before. This is not something that is new to this show in terms of fading Mr. Stafford this year. 249.5 or so. It opened at about 258. So hopefully you're able to jump on Stafford's passing props a little bit earlier than when you're going to be able to see this, probably just a day before these games actually are underway. So, roughly 250 passing yards for him. I still feel good about that under, even though, it's not quite what we were able to get it at much earlier in the week, Nate. But, with that Rams offensive line continuing to look the way it looks, dude, what are you supposed to say? It's the worst offensive line in adjusted line yards as they continue to just have that line of scrimmage go backwards at times for themselves. And it obviously doesn't help that their run game it's not the way that, McVay, we're used to seeing him being able to do that. So against a Bucks team that, they've had their own sort of suspect issues on the season, but for the most part, when the defense is healthy, which it was not last week, but as it gets healthier, it's been still a top 10 defense in the league this year. And obviously being able to stop the rush is something that they can kind of do with 4, to be honest, against a team like the Rams. So they're going to continue to be able to either, blitz their balls off, their bowls off. I guess I could have made that joke, as Todd Bowles loves to dial up a blitz, as we know. They've got Carlton Davis coming back from a hip injury. As we said last week, they were super banged up in a loss, another really disappointing loss for them on the season, a couple weeks ago too, against the Panthers. So at this point for Stafford, if it's going to be close to 250 and around that for him on that passing prop, I just don't think he has the time. You add the fact that Cooper Kupp had to leave last week's game, continues to sort of nurse an ankle injury. He is going to give it a go, obviously, but you don't even know how many snaps he's going to be available for. So I think it all points to an under for Mr. Stafford this week.
Yeah, or the even odds for him to throw an interception. Always love that when we talk about Stafford. I mean, he could, rack up enough yards in garbage time. And it's just interesting. DraftKings opened this at 258 almost as a misprint. It was 250 at Caesars, and now that's the consensus, and DraftKings has adjusted. But if you're able to jump on that on the opening, you feel a little bit better. I mean, this is going to be a disaster for Stafford in terms of his pass protection. Vita Vea and company just pushing that line of scrimmage backwards. I'm fading the Rams auto fade here. I think my most confident bet against the spread is the Bucks, who showed some signs of life there. They have a 10-day layoff now after losing to Baltimore, losing to Lamar. Did actually an excellent job guarding Lamar Jackson. And I get Stafford, who's just one of the most vulnerable QBs out there and just looks even more vulnerable behind this line. So the Bucks, if you got them at -1.5 where it opened, I think you feel great. I think you can bet them at -3 still right now, and throw that into whatever other parlays you want to throw here, because I think Stafford's going to at least throw a pick and struggle in general. Rushing props, I might feel best about this one. I think this will be our prop highlight up on the lines. A.J. Dillon at just 36.5 rushing yards. He had 54 against the Bills last week on 10 carries in a game that was obviously going to be negative game script from the jump. But the Packers stuck with the run because they know that they don't have any choice, right, with their offense. And now you face Detroit, which is the worst defense in the league. I mean, what do you want? Points per game, yards per game, third down conversion, rushing touchdowns allowed. That's the key here. So Dillon to get one touchdown is +240. He hasn't scored since week 1, I believe. But I think he snaps that here. Or +1900 for him to get 2. I mean, why not? I think Green Bay will give Aaron Jones a little bit of a breather here after he's been handling a much bigger snap share. But again, even with negative game flow, Dillon played 48% against the Jets and 46% against the Bills, averaging 44.5 rushing yards on the season. So why are we going lower against the Lions? And that Packers line is 4th in RB yards created. I mean, they're opening it up for whichever guy LaFleur wants to give the ball to, and I think he's going to use both of them here with the Packers finally favored, finally expected to get a win.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit nervous in the just first glance looking at this prop for Dillon. I was really just pre-nervous for any Dillon prop because of the fact that I think not only did the Packers establish, obviously we're going to run even if we're down by 3 scores last week, they also established that Aaron Jones is their best player, period. Right? Like they need to get him the ball in space, and they weren't doing that for 3 or 4 games in a row. And that was, the issue. And I can understand at times why they continue to love A.J. Dillon as a downhill runner. But look, like Aaron Jones is one of the best athletes at running back in the league, one of the best athletes in the league. And it's just such a strong runner, and you don't know what you're going to get from him. I think you need to continue to give him the ball, but they still didn't go away from Dillon, who still had 58 yards last week on a better yards per carry, than did Aaron Jones. So, if they're going to have both those guys in on 2 running back split sets, like I don't know, 30% of the time like they did or whatever it was, like more than any other team, then I'll continue to love AJ Dillon, who might as well be considered like an RB2-3, right? For most games that he's in. So 36 yards it's just not enough against one of the worst, defensive lines, especially against the run in the league. So I am going to go on an under here though with Mr. Devin Singletary. I'm not taking anything against him, when it comes to receiving. It's just, it's a game that does not bode well for him when it comes to the rush. His props at 50.5, Nate. So 51 rushing yards under that for him this week. Buffalo just they pass the ball, dude. Right? Like their play rate on the road, especially, is even lower. Their rush play rate, on the road is even lower than normal, which is already below average on the season for a team that loves to dink and dime, and obviously put the ball in Josh Allen's hands more than you ever take it out of it. So the Jets also happen to be the give up the second lowest yards per carry in the league, 3.8. They're seventh in DVOA rush defense. So I think, some of the yardage that you've actually seen Singletary get on the road this season was a little bit inflated. He does have 50 rushing yards per game in 4 roadies. One of those was the 90 yards versus KC, where it was just all, big holes and giant things down the middle as they were just trying to spy Allen on the outside and such the whole time and take away everything outside the numbers. And obviously that just opened things up for a nice draw at times for Singletary. And obviously Buffalo was also looking to keep the ball out of the Chiefs' hands a bit more. So you're not as worried about that in a game where they're happy to give the ball back to Zach Wilson after scoring down the field in 7 plays, 5 of which are all pass plays, right? So I mean, you might consider that trade, right, for Zach Moss for Nyheim Hines, and the fact that we've already heard Josh Allen say he loves the idea and is excited to be able to work with Hines and get him into the mix as well. So I think you'll be able to see Singletary get a bit more rest, and maybe that when he's in the game, it's more likely going to be a pass play, as they love the way that Hines is able to run as well.
Yeah, I mean, just why would you pound your head into a brick wall? That is the Jets' defensive line right now. I mean, that's the strength of this team. Really strong defense in general, but I think the Bills will be able to move the ball just fine, and they'll be able to use both James Cook and Hines as quick options extension of the running game, not to mention Josh Allen is part of the running game. So right. Singletary could have he could go way below this prop potentially if he doesn't break any big runs. Look, Zach Moss was already buried on the depth chart, so the fact that he was traded out should not raise Singletary's prop in any way.
Right.
Receiving props here, I think T. Higgins under 75 yards is fair. He had two catches for 6 yards until the very last minutes of that beatdown in Cleveland. Caught a 41-yard touchdown. Otherwise, just held in check because the Bengals couldn't pass protect. I expect them to do a much better job of that, but also to do a better job of run blocking against this Panthers team. And look, they need to establish the run or they're going to get Joe Burrow killed. Like, this is this time when you're 8.5-point favorites at home to just dictate, look, we're going to get Joe Mixon involved, whose prop, by the way, is about 67 rushing yards. Don't hate that. And not try to pepper Higgins if he's going to be shadowed by J.C. Horn, who's a really, really good corner. Actually is the number 1 corner in terms of receptions and yards allowed thus far this season, which is part of the reason, Carolina faces the 4th lowest pass play rate, also because they're usually trailing and because teams, again, can just run the ball and get out of there with a win. So Jamar Chase is probably out with the hip, and I think that's why we've seen Higgins' props go up. I mean, it's a situation where he does better as a number 2 wide receiver, right? When the safety's on the other side of the field, when there's double coverage on Chase, and he just gets to go play jump ball down the sideline. But now the Panthers can shade their coverage towards him if they even need to give Horn help because he's really good. So I think it's just too many yards right here based on this spot.
I think it's fair. I'm really ready to talk about all of this, to be honest. I first of all want to say I think we all need to relax a little bit on how much trash we talk on the Bengals offensive line. Watching Joe Burrow play quarterback is like he's got horse flaps on the side of his eyes and he's not allowed to get out of pressure. He just runs into sacks. It was absolutely wild to watch on Monday night against the Browns, who were collapsing for sure. But there was clear lanes for which way Joe needed to run. He's just bad at it, man. There's just some quarterbacks, he and also watching Daniel Jones, Mahomes, similar type of thing. So I do want to give some credit to the sacks that Joe Burrow is taking every year to Joe Burrow. The offensive line can't really open up holes for anybody. Joe Mixon's had nowhere to run, really. Haven't really seen him pick up any steam. It's not helpful, but to your point, they do need to establish that. I do think also the last point I would make to agree with you entirely is I think Jamar Chase is a top 3 or 4 or 5 wide receiver in the NFL. I don't think Joe Burrow is close to a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And I think a lot of his success is dependent upon Jamar Chase catching balls. And it's definitely dependent for, even like Tyler Boyd, right? Like is like their third wide receiver. I still would prefer Jamar Chase on the field if I'm taking Tyler Boyd props because of the fact that I think the whole offense is opened up by the fact that Jamar Chase catches everything around him. And that yak also, right? Just continues to run like a nasty running back after he catches the ball for that Bengals team. So yeah, this is a huge spot for them, man, and really a moment that we need to see it if they're for real. They do continue to get battered by offensive line injuries, which is also just not going to help T. Higgins get above 75 receiving yards. So let me finish us off here with one more over, though, Nate. DeAndre Hopkins, his receptions is 6.5. It's only minus 130 right now, I believe, on DraftKings and most books that you'll look for it. 6.5 is a lot of receptions for only minus 130, but like it's DeAndre Hopkins, right? He leads the NFL with 37% of the targets in that share for the Cardinals, 57% of the air yards. He also is what he gets in terms of the air yard share for the Cards, leads the NFL in that. Anything that's thrown his way that is considered a catchable ball, he catches 100% of the time. In his last couple of games, right, since he came back from injury, 27 and right injury and obviously the suspension rather. But since he came back, right, all these numbers are relevant for since that part of the season. But 22 of 27 targets over the last couple of games that he's caught, 100% of the targets that were catchable. So 22 of them he did catch, right. When he's in the game, Murray's QBR goes way up, right, 119 rating when he's targeting him specifically. Right, he just looks like a better quarterback overall every time he throws the ball to DeAndre Hopkins. 7 receptions for him after he just is averaging 11 over the last couple of games is like, come on, man. Like, he's just going to get the ball force fed into him continuously. And as anemic as this offense might look when they're not throwing to DeAndre Hopkins, it looks like a wonderful offense when they are, right?
Yeah. And that's part of the reason I put Kyler at over 262 passing yards but I would feel a lot more confident. It's basically because of Hopkins. There's Rondale Moore out there too. But the reason you're confident in Murray, who has a much better record, I think he's now 10-5 with Hopkins over his last 15. You mentioned the rating when he targets him. The guy has just turned into their offense, and Cliff Kingsbury's moving him all over the field, so he doesn't necessarily have to work on Tariq Woolen, the nice young corner for the Seahawks, who even if he's lined up against Hopkins, like you're gonna learn a few things from this guy who's one of the best route runners we've seen in the league in 5-10 years. Just an absolute monster, and he's so fresh after missing 6 games, not due to injury. Let's make that clear. Just because he was resting, because he got PED suspension. He's just a usage monster right now. In 2 games, and this is a huge game for Arizona against the Seahawks offense that's been lighting it up. A defense that's been improving, but I don't know how much of that is circumstance against who they've played now. And they beat the Cardinals without Hopkins. Now we'll see how they handle Hopkins when he's out there.
Yeah, 100%. And the Seattle defense, it's still bad. Let's be very clear. It's looked pretty good against someone, like you said, against the Giants passing offense. Yeah, it looked pretty good. But at this Adrian Hudson, or whoever their backup tight end, Adrian Hudson's still getting a few receptions, making them look like they've got a bunch of holes there. So they were giving up, I think, like the 8th most completions on the season. So 7 receptions for Mr. Hopkins seems fine. But that is all the time we have for you guys in this one. Continue to like and subscribe to that page so you can follow along with us. We're bringing you these NFL player props each and every week of this regular season. So until we see you next, happy betting.